Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the Midday News on 3FM 92.7. My name is Beatrice Sedu. The news is also live on Kasmi 107.1 FM and across the world at 3news.com. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Court of Appeal strikes out as withdrawn an application by the Attorney General seeking to stay the execution of its decision to acquit and discharge former MASLOC boss Sedina Tamakloe-Attionu. Also on the program this afternoon, Cape Coast Teaching Hospital under pressure as demand for dialysis increases. And much later on the program, second in a series of climate-driven migration and its impact in Ghana underway in Upper East Regional Capital, Bolga. We take you live for excerpts of the event. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. The Court of Appeal has struck out as withdrawn an application by the Attorney General to stay the execution of the acquittal of former MASLOC CEO Christian Sedina Tamakloe-Attionu. State prosecutors on Wednesday informed the court of a notice of withdrawal filed on August 10 after filing the application to stay the execution last month. Sedina Tamakloe-Attionu was acquitted and discharged by the Court of Appeal after the court withheld that she was wrongly convicted in April 2024. Correspondent Lord Edwasa joins us on the phone with some more. Lord, why has the AG withdrawn the application to stay the acquittal? And really, what does this mean for her legally?
Right, Beatrice, and so we understand and do know that the Attorney General has filed a repeat application to stay the execution order or to stay the release of Sedina Tamakloe-Attionu from prison custody at the Supreme Court. Now, he filed this application yesterday, for which reason today the state prosecutors were in court to, as it were, withdraw the initial application, which was filed at the Court of Appeal. Now, Sedina's lawyer himself was not pleased with that development because essentially the business for today was for the court to rule on the application to stay the execution. But rather, when the case was called, the state prosecutors indicated that they had filed a notice of withdrawal of that application, and that was the reason why the Court of Appeal withdrew it. And so he was saying that he expected the prosecutors or the Attorney General to essentially seek leave of the court to file that withdrawal. By doing that, we also notify the respondents, being Sedina's lawyers, before proceeding to withdraw. But be that as it may, it did not as well object or oppose that notice of withdrawal. And so the First Appeal essentially struck out that application as withdrawn. What this means is that a notice of hearing will be given for the same application to be heard at the Apex Court. And so that's what we are waiting for right now. We spoke to the lawyer for Sedina Attionu. His name is Sedina Antonio. You can listen to what he has to say after the decision of the Court of Appeal.
Yes, our concern was on the mood because, in our opinion, arguments have been advanced for and against the motion, and today's date was given by the court for the court to deliver its ruling. And we were just served yesterday with the notice of withdrawal. We believed that the proper thing should have been for the Attorney General to have sought leave of the court before going ahead and withdraw, because today's business was for the delivery of the ruling, and that should have gone on today, if not for their motion. So that was our position. But as we heard in court, for the substance of it was opposed to the motion in itself, or to the withdrawal in itself, but just for that to provide, so that we believed leave should have been sought before proceeding. Well, we have not been served formally any such motion, but as you have heard before, so we have not been served with any such motion formally, so I cannot speak to it.
Your client is still in custody. Since the court acquitted and discharged, there are those who will argue that she should have been freed by now. Have you made any processes to get her out? And what has been the issue with her still being in custody?
Yes, so we have, as we informed you on the day the judgment was delivered, we were beginning the administrative processes for it to be released. So we have done that and we are waiting. Wheels of justice, they move on their own speed and their own pace sometimes. So we are waiting to receive the necessary processes to proceed with her release, but we are working on it and we are strongly believing that soon she'll be out with us.
But have you had conference with her? Have you seen the client?
No, we have not had conference with her. We know the situation in the prisons, but we know that what we are doing is for her interest, and she also believes that what we are doing is for her ultimate interest and for ultimate release. So we are on the same page when it comes to the substance of what we are doing.
And you heard the lawyer for Sedina Tamakloe-Attionu, Lord Edwasari, is still on the line with us. Lord, let us understand in plain language. Sedina Tamakloe is now a free woman, no context to her acquittal.
Well, until the application is heard at the Apex Court and determined, she remains a free woman, because basically you do understand that the judge has signed her release warrant. And so until that application to stay the execution is heard, she is a free woman as it stands, because the Court of Appeal essentially acquitted her, meaning that she's been given a clean slate at this point, basically.
Thank you very much, Lord Edwasari. He's our court affairs correspondent. We stay at the courts because the new Patriotic Party has warned that Ghana's judiciary risks losing public confidence if it allows itself to be used to advance the prosecutorial agenda of the executive. The party is further accusing the Chief Justice Paul Bafuboni of facilitating selective vacation trials against NPP members. In a statement, the NPP said a decision by the Chief Justice to issue special warrant to 2 High Court judges to conduct full criminal trials during the legal vacation betrays the constitutional expectation of judicial independence. Christian Yale is my colleague. He joins me live in the studio. Chris, tell us more about the demands being made by the NPP as we speak.
In fact, the letter is dated 11th August 2026, and the New Patriotic Party says it is deeply troubled by the recent public utterances of the Chief Justice, His Lordship Justice Paul Bafuboni, in which he sought to justify his decision to issue warrant to 2 High Court judges to conduct 4 criminal trials during the legal vacation. Every one of the affected cases is a prosecution of persons associated with the NPP. The party finds his defense unconvincing, legally unreasonable, and revealing of the very partisan disposition it seeks to deny. So, Beatrice, they go ahead to mention some of the cases that are being considered, and the statement goes ahead to say that yet out of these 29 courts, only 2 have been singled out and granted special warrants to conduct 4 criminal trials requiring the physical appearance of the accused persons and counsel, whether or not counsel can attend. The Chief Justice has failed to answer one simple question: why only these 2 courts and why only these 2 cases? Now, the statement goes ahead to say that we know that cases of murder, rape, narcotics, armed robbery, and every other felony stand adjourned until the vacation ends, as they always have. If the vacation can pause the trial of a murder suspect, why can it not pause the trial of political opponent of the government? This selective agency shows that the object is not justice, but the incarceration of NPP personalities in the same indecent haste with which the trial of the Ashanti Regional Chairman of the NPP, Chairman Bernard Ndribo-Esiaku-Wontumi, was rushed to conviction. They mention or talk about the petition that has been submitted to the Chief Justice and say that upon all of this, the Chief Justice has instead gone public to defend the indefensible, treating the united voice of the bar with such disdain. Here they are referring to a statement or a letter from the Ghana Bar Association. Now, the statement goes ahead and make a number of claims. I'll just walk through briefly some of them and then what they are demanding. Now, they say the consequences played out in open court today. One of the two vacation trial judges, fully aware that defense counsel had given notice of their unavailability, adjourned the matter for less than 1 week and gave the accused person an impossible ultimatum. That is, find a new lawyer within days or personally conduct a cross-examination of the prosecution witnesses, failing which the witness would be permanently charged. Now, when you go further down to, the third page, it is a 3-page statement. They notice that judicial power, like executive power, is held in trust for the people of Ghana, and make mention of Article 1251 of the Constitution, which declares that justice emanates from the people. The New Patriotic Party therefore calls on the Chief Justice to immediately withdraw the warrant for vacation trials so that the affected cases resume like all others when the legal term reopens. Now, to heed the petition of the Ghana Bar Association and restore the settled practice governing vacation court to ensure that the ultimatum to the accused is rescinded, since no person may be compelled to stand trial without counsel of his own choosing, and to stop defending in public decisions that are the subject of legitimate professional protest, allowing his conduct to be judged by its fidelity to the Constitution. And so they end, Beatrice, by saying that the NDP remains committed to the rule of law, the independence of the judiciary, and the equality of all persons before the law. And they would resist by every lawful means the weaponization of the court against their members and against the Nigerians.
Very briefly, just for clarity, the NPP also accused the Attorney General of selective justice.
Exactly.
What was the justification for that?
Yeah, so when you read a portion of the statement, the NPP indicates that when you look at the positioning of the AG, for instance, and I want to read verbatim exactly what they are saying here. Now, a portion of the statement says that the public should recall that route by which his lordship came. They should recall how the Chief Justice currently came into office, right? And then his elevation as well. Now, they go ahead to talk about the removal of the former CJ, Justice Gertrude Arabe Sabatokonu. Now, his confirmation, referring to the confirmation of the current Chief Justice, was pushed through over the objection and walkout of the minority in parliament. He is, in every practical sense, the product of a partisan route to office. Even so, the NPP expected him to act with straight independence as the Constitution demands. Instead, his conduct is in facilitating these selective trials in apparent concert with the Attorney General's agenda against NPP personalities, betrays that expectation. The judiciary must never become an annex of the office of the Attorney General. So here they are leveling claims which they suspect to be that the Attorney General in this instance as well is issuing directives to the court and more or less like micromanaging how the court conducted business, lazing that vis-a-vis with how the former CJ was removed and saying that that shouldn't be the case.
Thank you very much, Christian Yali, bringing us details of that statement coming from the NPP. You're still here on the Midday News on 3FM 92.7, 14 minutes past the hour of 12. Stay with us.
Accra, Ghana, Africa, and worldwide. Join us on Inspirational Gospel Mix this and every Sunday, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m.
Get ready for the revolution.
92.7. Let's talk to private legal practitioner Christian Mom Hesse. Good afternoon to you, sir. Thank you very much for joining us. Hello, can you hear us, sir?
Yes. Good afternoon.
Yes, okay.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. I first of all wanted to find out from you. I'm sure you heard my colleague Christian Yale taking us through the statement coming from the opposition NPP. As a lawyer, is there any legal basis for the claim by the NPP that indeed the Chief Justice is doing, as it were, selective justice?
First and foremost, let it be known that the actions of the Chief Justice is very rooted under Order 79, Rule 1 and 2. And for me, in as much as that is fairly rooted, I believe this whole debacle is one that can be resolved through consultation. Again, the position of the lawyers is also rooted in 79.4, which also provides for legal vacation. And so it has been the practice over the years that legal vacation starts from 1st August to the end of September, and then we have the legal year resumes from 8th October. Now, legal vacation affects the superior courts. While that is so, interlocutory applications are mostly heard. However, emergency cases, as I cited, that 79.1 and 2 empowers the Chief Justice to direct that certain cases be heard. So it is in that direction that the Chief Justice is pursuing. And given the fact that the political one would expect that the bench and the bar would agree on the way forward in terms of how the trial should go by scheduling of dates and all of that. But the spectacle that we are witnessing is one of sadness. And when this happens, it leaves the rest of the people in quite a quagmire to ask, that the judiciary that we are vested to believe so much in, to hold in high integrity. You see, everything is fueled by perception. And when that metric starts rolling in the minds of the people, it would sway that confidence that they have in the judiciary. This is not good. This is not good for Ghana's judiciary. It is not good at all.
And let me ask you briefly, though. The NPP is also having the belief that the judiciary is being used to advance the executive's prosecutorial agenda. I mean, that's the point they've made. But from your perspective, what legal or constitutional remedies are available for the party if it wants to take this on further beyond the statement which has been issued?
I mean, for the accused persons, it's quite unfortunate because what it stands to mean is that they have, 6 days was issued to them. It's less than that because it was yesterday. And for them to produce any lawyer they could procure to prosecute their case for them, they would have to do it by themselves. And now, if they go to court, assume without admitting that they do not have a lawyer and they go to court, the judge would say that I'm putting you to proceed. And if they raise legal objection and the judge rules against it, they could decide that they will file notice of appeal against that ruling. Now, filing the notice of appeal does also not operate as automatic stay. Now, they will decide to file stay of proceedings pending the appeal. That one to the judge, since the judge also believes that he is acting within the administrative powers of the Chief Justice, that application would also be dismissed. Now, if it goes to the appellate court, chances that it will be dismissed is also there. So that's what I'm saying. This whole process is not beautiful. It is not helping the confidence in our judiciary. See, this should be in practice. We always have consultations with the bench as lawyers. If the case needs to be expeditious, if both counsels are available during the legal vacation, then the case will be scheduled to take place. If it is indeed that one is available, one it is not, it goes into the legal year. But the way this matter has been handled is not helping the image of the judiciary, and it is sad to say.
All right, we'll have to end it here. Thank you very much. Christian Mamhesi, private legal practitioner. Now, the Chebi Fire Station says it has responded to a fatal road traffic accident involving a Toyota RAV4 and a Kia Picanto on the Chebi Sikem Road on Monday, the 10th of August, 2026. A 6-member crew arrived at 3:30 p.m. and found the RAV4 severely damaged at the front, and we're trying to reach the fire officer who would bring us some more details. Now, ahead of that, the Upper East Regional Minister Donatus Akamugri-Atanga has called for stronger investment in climate resilience, warning that the region's growing environmental challenges could deepen livelihood insecurity and drive more people, particularly young people, to migrate. Speaking at TV3's Climate Talk series in the region, the minister said climate change must be treated as a major development and livelihood concern, particularly in communities that depend heavily on agriculture and natural resources.
Farmer-herder tensions and community conflicts. They may also create vulnerabilities that organized criminal networks and violent extremist groups could exploit. Our response must therefore support both displaced persons and their host communities. Humanitarian assistance must strengthen social cohesion and ensure that host communities do not become invisible victims of displacement. The security implication of development across the Sahel therefore requires a continuous vigilance. Although Ghana remains relatively peaceful and stable, we cannot afford complexities. I commend the Regional Coordinating Council, our security agencies, and the people of our border communities for their continuous efforts to safeguard our communities and borders. But modern border security requires more than physical barriers. It requires effective intelligence sharing, early warning and response systems, community engagements, resilient institutions, and the trust and cooperation of our people. Your Excellency, distinguished guests, the government of Ghana, under His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama, recognizes that climate resilience and national security are mutually reinforcing. Through the Resetting Ghana agenda, government is pursuing policies aimed at creating jobs, strengthening institutions, expanding economic opportunities, and building communities capable of withstanding climate and economic shocks.
And I heard the Upper East Regional Minister Donatus Akamugri. Let's bring you some more here. The government has commended the Church of Pentecost for dedicating its branches in South Africa to host Ghanaians who were caught up in the recent xenophobic attacks in the country, which claimed the lives of 2 citizens. Foreign First Minister Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa says over 500 Ghanaians sought refuge in 3 major branches of the church over a period of 2 months and 2 weeks. He says there is a final batch from Johannesburg set for evacuation this Sunday. A delegation he led met the chairman and leadership of the church to convey the government's appreciation. Let's listen to Mr. Okudzeto-Ablakwa speaking earlier.
We don't think that our job is just to preach and take people to heaven, but we need to be concerned about their habitation as well. That is why we build prisons, and people don't understand, because we want to do whatever we can to partner with the government to make life easy for people, because in Ukraine we had to send money from Ghana, and in this situation we had to send money from Ghana. Moving forward, I think you may have to think about how we can collaborate. Yeah, we can collaborate in terms of our missions work. We do mission, and Ghana also does mission. There are certain things we can help Yeah.
We have prioritized consular assistance, and so we encourage Ghanaians abroad to register with our diplomatic missions when they arrive. We want to assure you that we will intensify this collaboration. When we leave here, we would engage with our heads of mission that we have heard from Chairman who wants us to formalize this collaboration. So we should take steps. And probably our Director Legal is here. We can even consider an MOU of a sort so that we really formalize it, and then we know what our obligations will be within that framework. Because it will help, it will really, because if you look at our staffing in the embassies, we are not that many. So if we collaborate with you, you have a lot of pastors, a lot of members, you know, and if Ghanaians are in distress like we have seen in South Africa, you can even help us be the first responders before our embassy staff, you know, are called and then to complete the task.
And you had, first of all, the chairman of the Church of Pentecost, Apostle Eric Nyameche, and in the latter part, the Foreign Affairs Minister Samuel Okujeto Ablakwa. Christian Yale is still in the studio with us. Chris, just talk to us more about this partnership.
Exactly. So what we understand is that the Church of Pentecost has about 211 branches in about 211 countries or territories. And now, as you indicated earlier, the government, led by the delegation from the Foreign Ministry, went to appreciate the church. We know that in the recent xenophobic attacks in South Africa, about 3 branches in Pretoria, Johannesburg, and other cities in South Africa of the church were used to house the Ghanaian nationals. Now, beyond housing them, the church, we know, also provided for other needed, basic amenities that they needed to survive or thrive. Because then most of those Ghanaians, lost their jobs and were sacked from where they worked, and even what they personally did for those who were having personal businesses. So, government through the ministry, first of all, commended the church, or more or less recognized the effort by the church in rescuing the nationals. Now, what we know per the records also is that this isn't the first time that the Church of Pentecost has done that. During the COVID period, as well as the Russia-Ukraine conflict, they did similar. They exuded similar gestures. And so, beyond this and going into the future, what government is seeking to do is that because the church is present in more countries than the country has, missions or consular services in such places, they are seeking to formalize a partnership with the church so that in those countries, especially where Ghana does not have missions or embassies or high commissions, the church would then, based on the agreement and the responsibilities agreed in that MOU, would then go ahead to offer assistance to Ghanaians who may need such kind of assistance when the need arises, especially like what we witnessed recently in South Africa.
Thank you very much, Christian Yale, bringing us the latest from there. Now, residents of Amuamu, Awiem and Adankraja in the Bekwai municipality of the Shanti region have taken to the street to protest what they describe as the growing impact of quarry operations on their communities. The residents say frequent blasting by the quarry company generates intense vibrations, which they claim have caused cracks in buildings and left residents living in constant fear. And that's it for the Midday News here on 3FM 92.7. My name is Beatrice Sedu. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. Log on to 3news.com for more news.
Hello there, good afternoon and welcome to Business Daily on 3FM 92.7. Coming up, Bank of Ghana intensifies crackdown on unlicensed digital lenders, begins weekly publication of illegal operators and warns banks against risky partnerships.
Agencies are also taking action to facilitate the removal of non-compliant operators from the market. Relevant law enforcement and regulatory agencies are also taking action to facilitate the removal of non-compliant operators from the market.
An Institute of Fiscal Studies IFS flags government's 16.8% revenue target as institute warns of continued over-projection of revenue collected.
By maintaining the ratio, the government appears merely to be following the budgetary tradition in the country's recent history of over-projecting total revenue and grants to GDP ratio.
Plus, financial economist says strong demand for government securities raises private sector crowding out concerns.
More money is being moved to government securities, which is a concern. The private sector, either they are unable to afford the rate that is given, or they may not get the necessary funds to invest in strategic sectors.
I'm Michael Obodu. Details of our top stories and more lined up for you. Do stay tuned. Straight into our stories, and the Bank of Ghana has intensified its efforts to clamp down on unlicensed digital lending activities, with Governor Dr. Johnson Isiama announcing that the central bank has begun publishing weekly lists of entities identified as providing digital credit services without the required approval. Dr. Isiama said relevant law enforcement and regulatory agencies are also taking steps to facilitate the removal of non-compliant operators from the market. Speaking at the latest post-MPC engagement with heads of banks, the governor urged banks to conduct enhanced due diligence and verify the licensing status of digital credit providers before entering into partnerships or other business relationships with them.
The Bank of Ghana has intensified efforts to address the growing incidence of unlicensed digital lending activities. As part of these efforts, the bank has commenced the weekly publication of entities that are identified as providing digital credit services without the requisite approval from the Bank of Ghana. Relevant law enforcement and regulatory agencies are also taking action to facilitate the removal of non-compliant operators from the market. Banks are encouraged to exercise heightened due diligence when engaging digital credit service providers and should verify the licensing status of such entities with the Bank of Ghana before establishing any partnership or business relationship.
That was Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Johnson Isiama, speaking. Now, the Institute for Fiscal Studies, IFS, has raised concerns about the government's decision to maintain its total revenue and grants target at 16.8% of GDP in the 2026 mid-year budget review. Speaking on the assessment, Senior Research Fellow and Acting Executive Director of the Institute, Dr. Said Boachi, noted that the target originally introduced in the main 2026 budget statement presented in November remains unrealistic despite earlier warnings. According to the Institute, keeping the projection at 16.8% reflects a persistent pattern of over-projecting revenue targets rather than aligning with realistic collection capabilities.
The 2026 mid-year budget revenue and GDP targets on revenue, the government has kept the total revenue and grants to GDP ratio targets in the mid-year budget review at 16.8%, which was argued to be unrealistic in our review of the 2026 budget statement. When the government brought the 2026 budget in November, you said 16.8% was unrealistic. Despite this, the government has kept it at 16.8% of GDP. We still maintain that this ratio is unrealistic. By maintaining the ratio, the government appears merely to be following the budgetary tradition in the country's recent history of over-projecting total revenue and grants to GDP ratio. In fact, since 2015, when it was able to hit 16.0%, total revenue and grants as a ratio of GDP has stayed below 16% mark till now.
So that was Senior Research Fellow and Acting Executive Director of the Institute of Fiscal Studies, IFS, Dr. Said Boachi. Now, Senior Lecturer at the University of Professional Studies, Accra, Dr. Eric Boachi-Adom, says strong demand for government securities suggests banks and other institutional investors are increasingly shifting away from the private sector. According to him, the trend could worsen access to credit for businesses, particularly those seeking funds to expand operations and create jobs. Dr. Eric Boachi-Adom argues that government's continued reliance on domestic borrowing is increasingly crowding out the private sector from available funds, potentially limiting private sector investment and economic growth.
The appetite for treasury bill investment keeps going up. It shows that investors are rather more comfortable giving to the government than giving to private sector in the excess of over 10%. And if you look at the total private sector credit outstanding, it shows that investors are rather more comfortable giving to the government than giving to private sector in the excess of over 10%. And if you look at the total private sector credit outstanding on a monthly basis from the beginning of the year, January to now, it has averaged around 110, maximum 120 billion Ghana cedis. When you look at the value of investment going to treasury bills, in some month 15, and last month it spiked up to 45 billion Ghana cedis. So it shows that more money is being moved to government securities, which is a concern that private sector, either they are unable to afford the rate that is given, or they may not get the necessary funds to invest in strategic sectors. And this is what I think government needs to pay critical attention to, in ensuring that funds reach private sector at a very low cost, and the banks are encouraged through probably reducing the number or the value of treasury bills that are offered for subscription.
Senior Lecturer at the University of Professional Studies, Accra, Dr. Eric Boachi-Adom speaking there. Meanwhile, trading on the Ghana fixed income market reached 2.34 billion cedis on Tuesday, August 11, with domestic debt exchange program bonds accounting for nearly 60% of total turnover. GFIM data show 2.335 billion cedis was traded across 4,620 transactions. DDEP bonds led by value at 1.387 billion cedis, while treasury bills recorded 801 million cedis and accounted for almost 99% of all trades. Now, Ghana's trade in fiscal goods has expanded significantly over the past 2 decades, rising to $52.5 billion in 2025. The latest Ghana Statistical Service review also shows Ghana has increasingly moved from trade deficits to surpluses, while gold and Asian markets have become more important to the country's trade performance. This report has more.
Ghana's trade in physical goods has grown nearly ninefold over the past 21 years, reaching $52.5 billion in 2025 from $6 billion in 2004. This is according to the Ghana Statistical Service's latest review of the country's trade performance between 2004 and 2025. The report shows Ghana recorded a trade surplus of 148.3 billion cedis in 2025, up significantly from 44.7 billion cedis in 2024. Gold remains the country's dominant export, accounting for 63.1% of total exports in 2025, compared with 38.5% in 2004. The share of cocoa beans and cocoa products, however, fell from 29.3% to 14% over the same period.
On that note, that's how we end today's edition of Business Daily here on 3FM 92.7. For more stories, kindly check out our website. It's 3news.com/business. I am Michael Obodu. Thank you for tuning in. As always, please stay safe.